Hey everybody, welcome to the Linux Cast. I'm your host, Matt.
And I'm Tyler.
Yes, Tyler is back. We're back to the regular schedule of things. We want to take a special moment to thank Kip Dad for joining us last week, or joining me last week, and filling in for Tyler. We really do appreciate that. And we're going to do a proper episode of the Linux Cast. I promise we won't do any tangents or anything like that, and it's going to be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure.
Reach. Yes.
But just to let you know, this is the Linux Cast, in case you didn't know what you're tuning into. This is a podcast where we talk about Linuxy things. Always Linuxy things, except for last week when we really didn't talk about Linuxy things. Move on for me. Anyways, we're returning back to talk about Linux tangential things this time. We're going to talk about small form factor / single board computers this time. We're going to get really freaking nerdy, so I hope you guys are going to enjoy that. But before we jump into that, we have some catching up to do. Tyler, what is your computing situation? Because the last time we talked, you had just purchased like $12,000 worth of Mac equipment. I don't know. Are you still using a Macintosh computer?
Yes, I do have it sitting right here. MacBook, the 14-inch one. I'm not going to return it or anything like that. I like it. I wouldn't say I'm nearly as excited about it as when I first got it, but I have a lot of problems with Mac OS. But overall, it is a very nice computer, and the battery life is redonkulous. Like, it's not okay. It's I haven't charged. I don't remember when the last time I charged this thing is. Oh, the battery is low. It's like 20%. I have no idea. I don't know when the last time I've been using YouTube, Discord. It's been days since I've charged this thing, and it's still going. So I'm liking that. But I did end up. I've been doing a major update to Zany OS, and I have like rewritten everything. So I've been working on that. And last night I wanted to finish updating the install script and the documentation. But my Noctua fan on my cooler died, and I don't have another fan that's the same size as that one because it's kind of like a 90 millimeter, like an odd size like that. So I had to go home last night, grab my Intel Xeon motherboard, and bring it over here and hook it. Is actually using Zany OS or interested in it. There's a major rewrite that simplifies a lot of things and fixes a ton of issues. It would be out today, but now it'll probably be out tomorrow or later tonight. So that's kind of my computer situation. I told you before we started, but I also have been very inactive lately because I wrecked on my skateboard, got pretty messed up. I was going about 27 miles an hour on an electric skateboard and messed up my knee. If anybody wants to see a picture of it, I'll post it in Discord over on my server somewhere. Just ask for it or whatever. I'll post it. My knee was messed up. I showed it to one person earlier today. They're like, "Oh God." I was like, yeah. But my knee's fine. I'm fine. But yeah, I took some time off to catch up on TV and just relax for a bit. And I just didn't really have any motivation to do anything. Probably because I was taking kratom or a type of pain pill. That probably removed a lot of my, motivation and like energy. But it's healed fine, and I'm glad to be back using a computer and able to like get up and walk away from the computer without like severely grunting. Like I sounded like an 80-year-old man for like 2 weeks.
I'm sure. So, are you still self-hosting stuff, or did you kind of move away from that already?
Okay, so no, I'm not self-hosting anything right now, but I'm not moving away from it. I had issues with my Docker VM in Proxmox, and I figured out it was actually pretty easy to go ahead and just set up like containers in Nix, like the Nix like way of doing things. So I'm going to just have my Zany OS like development, like desktop PC, just host all of that stuff. So I haven't gotten to that yet, but I will be doing that here shortly.
It's entertaining because, so the last time we talked, after that podcast, you tried to help me with Docker. And yeah, you can be the testament to the fact that I was a complete and utter noob. I knew absolutely nothing. I had ruined everything. And you told me, Matt, you are stupid. You didn't actually say that, but I could see it on your face. Well, because I had installed OpenSUSE, right? And I had it on my El Cheapo Dell computer back there. And that's what I was going to run my Docker images from. And you were like, no, Matt, this is not a good way to do this. You do it with Proxmox. I was like, fine. More, I was like, fine, damn it. And I was like, I'll go learn how to use Proxmox. And then, we ended the call or whatever. And I ended up spending some time learning Proxmox, right? So I have, since the last time we talked, I have ditched the Dell computer, bought a HP server workstation that has 128 gigabytes of RAM and a Xeon processor. And I'm running Proxmox on that, and I have like 4 or 5 VMs. I have one that runs Plex and NFS, and that serves files to all the rest. I have one which is called Jack Sparrow. No need to explain what that does. That has a VPN running all the time and does the things that Jack Sparrow would do. And then I have one that is called Docker Host, where I run Portainer and a whole bunch of Docker containers. Like I have Nextcloud, I have Vault Warden, I have Fresh RSS, I have Krita audiobook, an audiobook one, and several others that I've been doing. So I went from where you left me to actually learning how to do this stuff. And Tyler's frozen again.
I know I don't know what's going on with my Wi-Fi, but it is terrible. And I have to use Wi-Fi right now because I'm over at a client's house. So yay!
We'll deal with it. We've had worse. It's just going to be very interesting. Every time you freeze, you're going to be in a very interesting position.
Yep. It's never going to be a normal, expression on my face when it freezes.
You're gonna look really weird every time. But anyways, that's where I've been over the course of the last month. I've transitioned from not knowing how to actually use Proxmox to actually, knowing how to use it, and setting up a whole bunch of Docker containers, both with Portainer and Docker Compose, because I had no clue how to use Docker Compose when you talked to me last time either. So I've been doing really awesome with that stuff. I'm into it, and I know
Docker Compose makes it fun. Like if we're being honest, it does make it fun. It's super easy.
And Docker Compose is really good, and Portainer's freaking awesome. And like there are a couple websites that somebody tweeted at me on Mastodon that have like a list of hundreds of Docker containers. So I'm not going through a lot of those just to find really cool things to self-host. So it's a time sink, definitely. Also, it's a money sink. I'm telling you right now that once you start, the money's going to start flowing. Even if you promise yourself, I'm just going to use this little, computer that cost $100 on eBay and it's going to be fine. That's not the way that it goes. Okay, because you're gonna want to do more. So
you start that's what I found. It's like you start you're like, there's like a few services I would like to self-host. That would be nice. Like these would be really good. And then you find one more. You're like, that's interesting. Then it's just one more. Just one more. And then before you know it, you're running 27.
Now I need a bigger computer because I need more RAM or I need more compute power.
Or you need like more disk space for all of those SQL databases you're running for all of these.
and then you realize that your network isn't secure because it's just your network, so you have to go buy it yourself. But I just yesterday I ordered a TP-Link switch so that I can set up my home lab on a VLAN so that I can kind of segment it right and put it from the rest of the network. So I got that coming. I also got like 100-foot. Because right now my home lab is on Wi-Fi.
God!
I know, but I didn't have any choice. There was no way to actually hook it up to. So it's fine. It's hooked up to an access point with a wire, and it gets from the access point. So it's not horrible, but the speeds aren't obviously great. But it works enough for what I need to do. But what I did is I ordered a 100-foot Ethernet cord, and I'm just going to run that thing around the room so I can hook it up physically to the new switch. It's not going to be great. There's no way for me to run this through the wall. I just have no way of doing it. It's just not something that I can do. Maybe I can hire somebody to do that eventually, but right now I can't. So it's just going to be the way that it is. And but I keep doing the. I also, to lead into the main topic, I also bought a Zima board, so I'm actually going to have another computer.
Oh, nice.
So another thing I did is I took the Dell computer that was originally going to be the home lab and put it in a Proxmox cluster, so now I have two on that cluster.
Before you know it, man, like that's one of the things that I really like about Proxmox. Have you started using it, the Markdown notes
I have
that you can leave?
Uh-uh.
It is great. I highly recommend start doing it. Like take notes of like stuff that you're doing to your server or like things that you would like to do down the line. It is so handy. You go into that Proxmox thing, you can have everything put together in a manageable way. And on top of that, you can have notes of like, okay, so the last time I was in here, that's what I did. I'd like to get these things done, but today I want to do that. Like you have like a log, or at least for me, like the way I keep it, it's kind of a document of what I've done and what I want to do and like problems that I've encountered, which there's only 2 of those, but
that's
for the large one.
That's a good thing because I could put that stuff in there. That way, if everything crashed, it would still be there. That's a good idea. I have just been putting all my ideas and stuff in a note in Joplin. Because that's another thing that I've started using is because now that I have Nextcloud, I can sync notes and stuff with that. So it's been a very entertaining time, also a very kind of humbling time because there's just so much stuff there that I don't know. But I tweeted this out the other day. It's kind of like when I first started using Linux. Everything was new again.
Yep.
And I know that a lot of my audience is like, oh man, I'm not really interested in the home lab stuff. And so I make home lab videos and like, they don't really do all that great because it's not really the audience that I've cultivated over the last 3 years. But I'm not going to stop making the videos. I'm not going to shove them down everybody's throats. I'm not going to make like one a week even. But there are going to be some home lab stuff there too. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, I mean, it's what you're doing, and also, if we're being frank, a lot of the people who aren't into home labbing are probably like me. I wasn't interested in it, and I tried it just for shits and giggles because I saw someone else doing it, looked kind of cool, and then I got really into it. Like, it is a lot of fun, especially if you like computers. Yeah. If you like computers, home lab is fun. Yeah. Like, it is fun.
Really is. So 2 comments that I need to... Steve, thanks for the super chat. He says, welcome to the cool Kids Club. So far, my home lab is becoming bloated with containers. Yeah, finally things are fun again. Love Jack Sparrow. It's a great name for a server. And then Milo Hoffman says it's just a matter of time before you end up with a server rack or a shelf like many of us. I know that I'm resistant to actually having that because I've watched YouTube videos of people who have that stuff and then they actually let the sound come through and it sounds like an aircraft carrier. I just don't have... Yeah. I don't want that anywhere in my house. And right now, the only place I could put it is in this room, which also happens to be my bedroom. So I really don't care for wanting to do that because what I have right now is fine. But I will say is that I never thought I'd encounter a time where I thought maybe 128 gigabytes isn't enough memory.
Yeah. Well, the funniest part about home lab to me is like, I know for a fact there has been plenty of people who've gotten into this hobby and then never once ever considered learning anything about contracting, running wires, anything like that. I've seen Reddit posts of people who have like built sheds or like somewhere to put their rack, like attached to the house or built something inside of the house to like isolate it and then like learned how to run wires in their home solely for their home lab. Like, I'm scared of becoming that person. I'm so scared. I'm not there yet. I like having just regular machine, maybe having another one. Maybe I'll get a small little other one. Maybe. I don't need it now, but maybe. Before I know it, I'll be like, well, like running a 60-foot, 100-foot cord isn't that bad. Like, I mean, I just got to drill 2 holes in the wall.
What I thought about it though. If you think about it, because you can get a 8x8, maybe 10x10 shed for like $6,000. And you get one of those, have it put on, it costs a little bit more because you have to put some concrete down because you want it to be stable. You get that, and then you just hire them to put, just hire an electrician, put some electricity out there, and then, run yourself some Ethernet cable underground or whatever that you need to do to put all your stuff out there. And that's where your home lab would be. That's a fantastic idea.
You could start your own like little database. Like, I mean, that thing could be like a data center. Like it'd be great.
Then because you could put like an air conditioner in there, so it'd keep it cool.
It would be hilarious if like 2-3 years from now, like we're living on a shared property, like with separate houses, and like we're running a little small like a data center that serves like Linux content.
It's got the best Nextcloud server everywhere. It's got collaboration and everything. That's the best thing ever. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the main topic here. And it kind of ties into all this stuff, but I think we're going to try to broaden it out so it includes some interest for other people. So we've heard a lot over the last 10 years or so about single board computers, specifically, like the Raspberry Pi, but there are many, many others now. So like one of the things that I ordered was, I talked about the Zima board, and that's another single board computer, only it's x86, right? So that's kind of what got me.
Question. When you were shopping around for boards, did you check out any of the, oh good Lord, RISC-V ones? Any of those development boards?
I didn't, because I wanted to be able to run pfSense on it, and that will only run on x86. And the Zima board is fantastic for that because it already has the a dual NIC on it, so you can run 2 cords into it. So the thing is, like, all of this stuff is very enthusiast, right? The Raspberry Pi is still very enthusiast. It's been around for 12, 15 years or however long it's been. It's been around for a long time. And all the ones that kind of have come off from that, and even the Zima board and the ones that are kind of more usable for like Windows or whatever, even if you wanted to put Windows on it, they're all still very enthusiast. None of them have hit the main market. So what I wanted to ask today is, do we envision a future where single board computers, or really small form factor computers even, are more mainstream? Like, and when I say mainstream, I don't necessarily mean like they flooded the market and that's all you can buy, but like a lot of people, like normal people, would buy them. So, Tyler, what do you think about this?
I think down the line that will actually be, I mean, they already tried doing that with the, like the different companies that were making those like little tiny mini computers that had like, they were essentially like souped up Chrome boxes, but they were for like game streaming, and then for like just to use a regular computer, like do regular office tasks and stuff. But then like they sold like a game streaming service with them. I'm pretty sure a lot of these have failed. I don't even know if they're still products, but those kind of things were getting popular. But the problem with them was like the whole game streaming aspect. If you can get a computer that size and have it be a fully functional desktop computer that has horsepower behind it, yeah, people definitely start moving that way, especially if we get to the point where we improve upgradability on those types of products. Like a lot of the bare bones mini computers, as long as the RAM's upgradable, hard drive, SSD, like all that shit's upgradable, they'll sell well. Like people want them. I just think a big problem that we have with those smaller computers and single board computers is either the GPU performance is terrible, like terrible. Sometimes the CPU performance is terrible too, but really, in all honesty, if you're buying a $30 single board computer, like you shouldn't expect the CPU to be fast as hell anyway. So, but yeah, I think they'll definitely get popular. I don't know if they'll replace bigger like computers ever, only because you can just put more processing power into something bigger.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the like ARM and like more efficient chips that you see on the single board computers will eventually make their way into being just standard on the bigger computers as well. Like you're just going to have the same device that's smaller and more slimmed down, and then a bigger, beefier version of that same processor. in your desktop.
Well, I mean, eventually you would think that they will have made graphics cards so big that they don't fit in the computer anymore. Like they just, one of the brand new 3090s that they just came out with, I saw it on like Linus Tech Tips or something like that, is 4 slots. It's like 4 slots.
Yep.
Some desktop computers don't even have 4 slots.
Yep.
Like,
well, the best part that I've seen about the graphics card stuff, someone posted a meme with, it said the new NVIDIA 5090, and the power port on it, like, where it takes the like pins, it was just your standard power supply connector on the top.
Eventually, yeah, it's going to be like a 24. You're going to have 2 24-pin connectors, and one go to the motherboard, one goes to the GPU. Like, it's going to happen. It's going to draw like 5,000 watts from the wall.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, like if you watch like Gamers Nexus in one of their hardware news things, they were talking about how AMD is having a hard time selling gaming graphics card, and I think that while Nvidia keeps increasing their share, but most of that stuff seems to be in the enterprise realm, right? The gaming stuff seems to have been slowing down quite a bit, and some of it is because of cost. I mean, it's really fucking expensive, but also they're huge and noisy and draw a lot of power. And the reason why this kind of ties back to what you were talking about with the single board computing stuff is that I think eventually we're going to get to the point where the only way you can have a GPU is to have it in its own box. You know what I mean? Then it connects to you via Thunderbolt. I mean, we already have this, right? But external GPUs never really took off as popular as they thought that it'd be. But because the technology actually already exists, I think that eventually something like that could help the proliferation of single board and small form factor computers, because you can then have the biggest, most noisy, powerful thing that that usually has to take up all the space in your case on the side in its own box. It just hooks via a wire. Now, I don't know if that future ever comes to pass, really. Maybe I think that kind of stuff, when it's possible, eventually, like with RISC-V or even just regular ARM computing, maybe for enthusiasts. But I think that for me, that the vast majority of people who use the vast majority of use cases for single board computers will be single use. So they will continue to get more popular. I don't know if we'll ever consider them, mainstream, but people will get them to run their security cameras or their home assistants or whatever. And that one board will just go run that one specific thing instead of having one desktop that runs all of it. They'll have a couple of things that just run little things. And I think that the Internet of Things, if we still call that the Internet of Things, maybe they've renamed it to Web 4.0 or whatever it is. But
yes,
I think that as people get more and more smart things in their house, we're actually seeing single board computers in the form of smart hubs and things like that. And those are going to be the single board computers that are going to be in the mainstream. And while they aren't things that you can really hack on because they're proprietary and closed source and all this stuff, they still will, are there and provide a computing thing that's very single use. And I think that's probably the way that we go. But I think that, and we can talk about this, the thing that holds back the Raspberry Pi, and especially RISC-V, is that it's astonishingly slow developed. Like yes. We've been hearing about the promise of RISC-V for my entire life. Like, seriously, the entire life of my life, especially all of your life. You're much younger, and we never. We're at the point now where it'll run, kind of. You can use it for some things, but you can't really use it for anything productive yet. When's that actually going to happen? Like, when are we going to see, like, you can go buy a RISC-V and they can actually use it to run a Linux distro or, Home Assistant or Docker containers, whatever. Like, when are we going to get there? And the problem is, like, it could still be 20 years from now. In that case, something else is going to come along, And Lost, thank you for gifting 5 Linux Cast memberships. I have no clue what that means, but I appreciate it.
When you do that, it's like giving away, like you're essentially buying YouTube memberships for other people. So you're gifting memberships to those other people.
Never had that happen before, so that's why I had no clue what it meant. So thank you, Lost, for that. That's awesome.
Thanks.
This is very nice of you. What are you doing on the internet? Nice people aren't supposed to be on the internet. all I see are like, oh, the internet's assholes.
You're supposed to be out touching grass. Like,
yeah. You're supposed to be
nice people can't be here.
Real people. Anyways, thank you for that. And I'm not just fake people. Anyway, so I don't know. Raspberry. So let's transition to just talking about the Raspberry Pi. So like the Raspberry Pi was supposed to be the thing, right? And it has advanced spectacularly over the last 15 years. Like you can actually use it for things now, and you can even run like actual full-blown Linux distro on it and use it for things, watch YouTube on it and browse the web. So that's the board that has been really interesting. But I think that the pandemic really fucked Raspberry Pi up. Like everyone was buying them, you can no longer get them because like Raspberry Pi's thing was like you could go get this thing for $35. Everyone could have one. You know, you could do whatever you want with it. It was $35. If you didn't end up doing anything with it, you could put it in a drawer and you were only out $35. You know, now you go look at a Raspberry Pi, it's like $135, maybe $200. And because
especially if you want to get a kit with a charger, like if you want a power cord with it, like you're looking at spending $180. Like, have a good day.
Yeah, and when you're talking about something that isn't going to be like your full-on, you know, like computing beast, spending that kind of money, like, well, then I might as well just go buy an x86 computer off from eBay for like a couple $100 that has more power, more RAM, upgradability, probably pulls about the same amount of power, you know, and you know, can be expanded into real hard drives and stuff like that without having a bunch of dongles hanging off from it. You know what I mean? So I think that a lot of the times that the single board computer thing was like, you know, it's cheap, so I can do these things with it. But once it's no longer cheap, it's no longer like the Zima board thing that I bought was like $200. Like it was $180 or whatever. And I got it because I'm a nerd, but it wasn't a smart purchase. Like I could have much easier got like one of those Lenovo mini computers or whatever. That would have been just as easy. Sprungles, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. Thanks for streaming. Love this discussion. Just thought I would try to support a fellow Linux content creator. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. You guys have to. I have to apologize. I'm not used to getting a lot of super chats. I don't know what to do with them. I'm not used to calling them out. I'm getting better. Also, we don't. Like last week we streamed, and then we had like 2 weeks before that, so I'm out of practice. Tyler, do you have any like Raspberry Pis that you use or that you've used in the past?
I did. I had a Raspberry Pi 3B. I think I had a Raspberry Pi Zero too. I know I've had a couple, but the Raspberry Pi 3B was very fun to mess around with. But towards like after about a year and a half of having it, it just sat like my closet in a container or like a tub, and it had batteries in it, and the batteries leaked over the Raspberry Pi. So I gave it to a friend who said he wanted it and would clean it up and like maybe bring it back to life. I was like, it's yours. Have it. I'm not dealing with battery acid all over it. Like, I'll pass. I'm good. So I don't know. Like I liked my Raspberry Pi. My problem with Raspberry Pis is not that they're not a good value for what they're supposed to be sold at. Like the price point that they're supposed to be sold at, they're great. My problem is the Raspberry Pi 4 is the first one that actually is like really usable. Like really usable. The 3B, it was getting close. It was just really slow in some areas, but the Raspberry Pi 4 is what you expect for that price point. It's good. I hope the next one is actually impressive. And I mean, really impressive. That's really all to me, I don't understand how we don't have something like a Raspberry Pi with like some kind of Qualcomm chip or something that at least competes with that level of performance. scale it back a bit, sure, but give us something that's got some beef to it. If you got to put a freaking heatsink on it, it's fine.
Well,
it's okay.
The Raspberry Pi 5 is out, but you didn't
Oh,
really.
it is?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Like, you didn't really know that because it wasn't really advertised all that much, and I don't know. Like, you can go to their website. Like, I can actually show this to everybody here. Like, you can go to their website and actually apparently buy this thing, and it's $80 for 8 gigabytes, which isn't bad, but you still have to buy other things. Like the Pi 4 had problems with heat. I can only imagine that the Pi 5 is probably the same. So if you get this thing, you're going to want a case with a fan. You're going to want the active cooler probably. You're probably going to want the SD card because you're actually going to need to put an operating system on it. You're going to need an HDMI cable if you don't already have one. You're going to want a power supply. And then you're up to $127. But by the time you get there, and it's going to be still a Raspberry Pi at the end of the day. You know what I mean? It's not going to be. It's not going to be as like you're going to be able to run Linux on it, which is great. We love Linux. It's a Linux cast after all, but you're still going to be limited in the things that you're going to be able to do with it. And if you want to do even more with it, if you're going to want to run things on it that require a lot of memory or a lot of hard disk space. Like if you want to create your stuff in NAS, you have to then go buy the hard drives. You have to find a container for the hard drives or 3D print them. Maybe you'll need a 3D printer. Like I think the biggest problem, someone mentioned this earlier when we were just starting, one of the things that you really kind of have to pay attention to or think about when you're this is that, the single board computer thing is small. But then you have to attach things to it, and you have cables running everywhere and, exposed wires and all this stuff. And it's not bad for enthusiasts because we expect dongles as enthusiasts. Like when I get my Ethernet cable, I expect to be able to run that 100-foot thing around the room and trip over it half the time. I expect that. But normal people, I'm not going to expect that thing. They want a tidy thing in one single container that they don't have to put together themselves. One thing. So here's the thing. You remember with the Pi 4, they came out with the Pi 400 or whatever it was called. It was basically a Pi in a keyboard. That thing was fantastic. Like that needs to happen with every single version of the Pi, that people can just grab that keyboard, plug in their monitor, and go. That was awesome, especially as it gets more powerful. That should be like the first thing that comes out. Like, I understand that still supposedly like a development board is supposed to be for people who are, interested in tinkering with it. But if you want it to move more into people who just want to use it, that keyboard with the Pi inside of it was the product. And I want like 5 of them, but you can't buy them anymore. You just can't find them. Which is an absolute crying shame. I don't know.
Now, someone pointed out in chat that Qualcomm, like I made the point that Qualcomm should just like we should get some good single board computers with their chips. I'm looking at their single board computers, and just so you guys know, I think it was Jonathan that pointed it out in chat, or Sprungles. No, these are not like usable small form factor computers usable in the same way that like a Raspberry Pi is. There's not an HDMI port on it. There's not like normal connectors. It's got USB, but like I'm looking at one here. It's got like a COM port on it, like a whole bunch of stuff. And that's kind of like my problem. I want something like the Raspberry Pi, but with that like Qualcomm like phone level of performance, where like if I'm gonna pay $100-something for a single board computer, I want it to have some oomph behind it, and that's really, I think that's most people's problem with them. It's really not even a problem with the price point. $100 is not a bad price point for a computer, but you could go buy an old used like mini PC that's got better performance by a long shot, and just get it off eBay for close to the same price.
I think when it comes to ARM, the problem is that outside of Apple, no one's really made a good ARM PC. No. Like, it just hasn't happened yet. Now, you hear promises from Qualcomm all the time that, this next version that's going to run Windows just like all the others is going to be the thing. But they promised that before, And then you have to deal with all the incompatibilities that ARM has, and Apple's done like you have the Apple thing. Like you can run Intel stuff on your MacBook seamlessly. Like it has the Rosetta 2 or whatever it says, you just use it. And we're not, the rest of the ARM people, whether it's Windows or Linux, is not there yet in terms of being able to just have the full breadth of software available to that type of processor. It's just not there yet. And the thing is like that kind of suffers from the same thing that RISC-V has, only slightly better, is that it's just not as fast developed, and they don't seem to have the talent that Apple, for whatever reason, seems to have purchased for itself when it comes to actually making these chips. And I think that you're right that eventually that type of thing is where we're going to go, because we can all be very honest that RISC-V is not it. Like it's just not. Despite the fact that it's very well backed, like if you go to the RISC-V page or whatever, you can see it's backed by Google and Microsoft and Apple and all sorts of companies. They have apparently a ton of money behind it. It's still too slowly developed for it to ever be anything more than enthusiast, or for people who, for companies that are going to get the exclusive rights to whatever they create, right? And
well, that's the biggest problem with RISC-V. It's use case outside of enterprise, like specific enterprise use cases where you're going to develop something specifically for your use case. It doesn't do well for general computing. It's not good. And I based off of the progress it's made over the past 5 years, I'd be very surprised if that changes. Very surprised.
I don't think that it's I don't think it's something that they want to have happen. Yeah. I think that RISC-V will take the place of the things that I was talking about, where they're very single use. Like they can do one thing very, very well. It's going to go into an Internet of Things thing. It's going to go into a router. It's going to go into a light switch or whatever. That type of thing. That's where RISC-V is going to shine, and it's going to be fantastic. The fact that it was developed in an open source way, it's going to be awesome. But for general purpose computers, it's never going to happen. Like, people will try to force it into happening. Like, look at me, I developed a version of Ubuntu that can run on RISC-V. I think actually Canonical has done that. Like, you can run Ubuntu. I think maybe I read that. I don't know. Maybe they're working on it or something. Too. But but it's not good. You're never going to want to use it as your daily thing. You're never going to go and say, well, I'm going to go run Proxmox on this thing. It's like, it's just not.
Well, let's be clear. The best development board that I've seen that it's not, it is expensive, but it's not ridiculously expensive. And it's got a processor spec that you would be comfortable using. It is a 1.4 gigahertz quad core. Or no, 1.0. It's a 1 gigahertz 4-core processor. That's not going to be impressive for most people. Like, that's usable.
Well, but they'd use it for a single use thing, like to run, maybe a Home Assistant or something like that. It's just doing this one thing, and it will do that very well. But you're not going to ever want it to do more than one thing. And the thing is, when you talk about a consumer computer, you want things to be able to do multiple things. Like, you maybe want to run VMs or whatever. You're going to want to do all this stuff on it. And, until it gets to that point. And I don't think that RISC-V itself ever will. But ARM is interesting for multiple reasons. First, the bad reason is that it's proprietary, obviously. But also, even more than that, it's really stupidly licensed. Like,
yes,
ARM itself is like only a licensing organization. ARM doesn't do like they require. They do some design, but most of the design for like Apple does most of their ARM design in house, and it's just licensed the base level stuff from ARM. NVIDIA and Qualcomm do the exact same thing. When you're talking about the type of stuff that we're looking at, like Raspberry Pi is like the only large company that's been able to take ARM and do anything with it. Like Pine 60, okay, so Pine 64 is the other one that you hear about, and I've never tried one of their laptops, but I have one of their phones. It is fucking garbage. Like, it is bad. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm just a fucking moron and I can't get Mobian to even install on it. I tried the Manjaro ARM, which is what it comes with. It's not good. Like, it feels... They tell you that it's a development device. You should trust what they say because it is, in fact, a development device. Like, this thing is not for daily use. Now, I know that there's somebody in chat or in in the comments saying, like, oh, I've been using the Pinephone Pro for 2 years as my daily driver. I guarantee that you don't actually use it all that much. Maybe you get phone calls and text messages and it works fine. That's good. And if that's all you want from a phone, that's fantastic. But if you want more than that, you're not there yet. So
well, I mean, the clock app works.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. The Manjaro ARM clock app, for me at least, probably half the time was broken.
I know. I love that so many times because I've heard that before where people are like, well, I mean, you could totally just switch over. Like, I mean, Linux phones are ready. I'm like, they're not. Because some of the built-in apps don't even function properly.
The camera does not work, or did not work in Manjaro ARM. Now, I still never went actually, because there's actually, I have this thing right here. It's like this is the Pinephone Pro. It doesn't have a charge on it, so I can't show you anything. But there are switches in the back, and I every time I say like the camera doesn't work, what I'm assuming is that the reason why it doesn't work is because these little puny ass, like there's no way you're going to see this on camera, but there's these little puny ass switches, and I think that they're all set to off. Not all of them, but the camera one is set to off, and that's the reason why the camera app didn't actually work when I tested it the first time. But things like that. I mean, like this here is the example that we have of a thing that has tried to go as mainstream as a Linux device can go, right? And this is bad, right? Like this is the thing we're talking about. It's like this type of thing. Like, this is technically a single board computer right here. Basically, I mean, obviously there's more stuff in there than just a single board, but this is the type of thing we're talking about. And the thing is that when until this type of thing and like the Raspberry Pis of the world can get really good, like, that's never going to go mainstream. That's the reason why I say that the single purpose stuff, like that may run RISC-V, is going to be the thing that comes to the mainstream first, because you'll be able.
Hold on. But that's the worst part about this entire conversation. If those things get mainstream, which they pretty much are, like Linux applications, single use applications, no one will know that they've gotten popular. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if RISC-V does truly become synonymous in almost all of your devices, people don't really know. The same way most people don't know Linux is used everywhere.
Yeah, you're right, because everybody's going to be... They'll get their little, Philips hub or whatever that may have a RISC-V, processor in it, but they don't... I mean, you don't know what processor's in your home hub. That's true. I think that that's probably as good as it's ever going to get, though, because the more general purpose stuff just is getting good too slowly. Or in the case of like Raspberry Pi, which has gotten good to the point where you can use it, it's still it has two problems. Like we talked about, the price, like it's gone up in price, but also, well, I guess it's got three problems kind of associated with it's gone up in price so far, where it almost makes more sense just to go get a used x86 device, right? A mini PC, like you said. And second, it still has the stereotype of being for development, like for people who are, tinkerers. It's not going to get rid of that stereotype anytime soon. It just I don't think they even want to get rid of that stereotype. That's what they're for. Like, Raspberry Pi.
Well, I mean, some of them are intended for that purpose. So,
general people who buy them get them for tinkering reasons, and the other people who buy Raspberry Pi devices are enterprises that buy them in like bulk and run them, for basically servers. And that's great that they have taken that market to the point where they can make a profit, and they're thinking about an IPO and all that stuff. I don't think that it really. Maybe eventually it will help the proliferation of those type of devices out into the general market, because people will buy them, see them in their places of work, and buy them. But I think that still most people who buy them are going to be people who want to tinker with them. Also,
Yeah.
lawnmower outside my window.
I wonder, because when you were talking, it was sounded like you were getting more reverb. But now that you said lawnmower, yeah, no, it wasn't that your mic was getting messed up, your voice was getting deeper or anything. No, it's the sound of the mower in the background, like over your voice.
Yeah, it's just no, it's summer. We're just gonna have to deal with that kind of stuff going on outside.
It ain't bad. It's good.
Real people who actually go out and touch grass do that type of thing.
I know.
Lame.
Why?
All right, so just to kind of wrap this thing up, I think that the reason why I wanted to talk about this was that getting into the home lab stuff made me realize how big home lab stuff is. Like, that HP workstation that I got is fucking huge. It wouldn't even fit underneath my desk. Like my standing desk has a bar or whatever that holds it up to a standing position, and it wouldn't fit underneath that, so I had to sit it on the back. So the thing is huge. The Dell that I had was not as big. It's just a regular ATX case, but it's still very large for what I was planning on doing with it. And I'm interested in a future where I can do the same thing I'm doing with that HP workstation, but in a much smaller form factor. Like, I want that future to happen because for multiple reasons. One, it obviously takes up a lot less space, but also, it would take less power. Because you don't want, the worst thing I found getting into this home lab stuff is that I'm very worried that having that workstation on all the time is going to cause my electricity bill to skyrocket. Like, I'm very worried about that. And I'm getting my bill at the first of the month. I'm very wondering how it's going to go. So I'm interested in a future where I could, if I wanted to, use like a Zima board 10.0 that has 128 gigabytes of RAM and the ability to hook up, whatever I want to it. And that is a future that I'm very interested in. I just don't. It feels a little depressing to feel like it's moving so slowly that we may never get to that point. You know what I mean? It's just.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree. I'm in the position where I am kind of upset that the only way for me to get a phenomenal laptop experience, like, this is hands down the best laptop experience I've ever had, I have to use Mac OS to do it. Like, if this was just in the market and available, and especially if you could run Linux on it and get it from, Dell or an OEM, it'd be freaking awesome. Like, there is something to be said for power efficiency. And I think modern computing, people don't realize it, but even in regular, modern, semi basic computing, you're doing a lot with media creation. And efficiency means something when you're doing that. Anything media related.
Also, I think what we're really going to have in order for this to work is for ARM to be successful on Windows first. I know that sounds really weird, but if we can,
I would agree.
If Microsoft can put in the resources and Qualcomm can put in the resources to make ARM good on Windows, Linux will follow. Because we can take that hardware and do awesome things. They did it with macOS. Asahi Linux exists, and while it's still in development, it's apparently pretty good. It has some problems, but I think you and I did a podcast when they first announced the Asahi Linux project, and we mocked them. We said, there's no way this is ever going to get any further than them being able to just run it jankily on the machine. And they've blown past that, and to the point where it's actually usable for a lot of people.
The fact that they got hardware acceleration working should be commended.
Yeah.
That's wild.
They did amazing work. Can you imagine what would happen if the ARM was good on Windows? Because the number of people who do Linux development but also use Windows is much higher than those who use Mac. So the resources put into making Linux work good on a Windows ARM machine would be much higher if those type of things were mainstream. So in order for Linux on ARM to get good, Windows has to get good on ARM first. And unfortunately, they suck at it. I mean, they're really, really, really bad at it. Every try that Microsoft has had to put Windows on ARM has been the worst thing you've ever used. Windows S was really, really bad. They had the WinRT, when it was Windows 8 or whatever. That was astonishing bad. And then they had the Surface Go, which was ARM, which is this little
terrible.
Like, it was so bad. Like, you couldn't even use it as a regular like iPad replacement. It was so bad. So until that happens, I think it will get happen because Microsoft is not going to look at Apple and see the success that Apple has had with the Mac and ARM and say, we're just going to continue on with Intel, right? Like we'll just ride that until it dies. I don't think that that's the play. Now, you can argue that Microsoft doesn't care about Windows nearly as much as they used to. Whatever, I don't. Maybe. But I do think they do care still. I mean, they make billions of dollars still off from desktop and laptop sales, and they want to continue to make that money. So I think that they'll eventually hopefully they'll eventually get it right on ARM. And I think that if that happens and that proliferates, then that will trickle down to the point where Linux will finally have the hardware available that we can say, hey, let's make it good on that hardware as well. Because I feel, maybe I'll be wrong, but it feels like it'd be much easier to get Linux working on Windows ARM hardware than it was to work on Mac ARM hardware.
I would be amazed if it wasn't easier. Like, the work Apple does to keep you from screwing around and being able to do your own thing is a lot. Microsoft, I mean, they'll put in some work, but even the work they do is crap, like most of the other work they do. So not the individual workers at Microsoft. The individual workers at Microsoft do a great job at trying to hold up a shitty empire. It's like trying to, fix a wall, but all you've got, the wall is like made out of solid brick, but you got toothpicks. And like, that's what the Microsoft workers are, having to deal with. They're keeping a wall standing with toothpicks. They're doing a damn good job at it. So I would be surprised if Microsoft doesn't make it easier to develop.
Well, the legacy stuff has always been the thing tied around their ankles, preventing them from being good on ARM. Like because they want to have an Epson printer from 20 years ago work on their operating system, they can't do anything modern with it. That's has been their problem forever. So and when they have tried to abandon that legacy with with their operating system, people have gone up in arms, and it's also not been good. Like if they had a situation where they did abandon all the legacy code, they had a different kernel or whatever, and it worked really, really well on ARM, that would have been okay because people would have looked past the lack of legacy support for it just being good. Like, people would use a piece of Windows software or a piece of Windows hardware that had the battery life of that MacBook. They would do that. They'd happily do that. Most people don't need the legacy stuff. Corporations do, sure. But regular, normal people don't care that their 20-year-old Epson printer doesn't work. They'll just go buy another $30 printer. You know what I mean? So I know we transitioned into a Windows podcast there for a second. We got a little confused, but I think that it really is very important for if Linux has any hope of ARM being good, and that includes on single board computers, it has to have Windows go first. Because the more Windows ARM stuff that's out there, the more development Linux developers will focus on ARM computing on Linux. And once that happens, then it will all trickle down. Until that time, it's just not going to happen.
We'll see.
It's just not going to happen. And the thing is that neither of us trust Windows to actually get this right. I think that they probably will eventually, because they have a ton of money. They have trillions of dollars they can throw at it. But how long is it actually going to take? Is it actually going to be as good? Will they do something stupid like lock it down with TPM so nobody can actually use it? In which case, then none of this conversation makes any sense because there's no way to get around it. It's going to be another Asahi thing where you have to kind of hack into it in order to actually get it to work.
Yep.
There's many different ways they could fuck it up for all of us. And we honestly think that they probably will.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
It sounds like the Microsoft I know.
Yeah. Well, then the thing is like, here's the stupid thing is like, we know that ARM is huge in servers, right? Like they desperately want ARM to be as big in servers as possible because you can put a ton of cores in an ARM chip and run them for like a third or 10% of the energy consumption. So you can save a ton of energy because you're running ARM. They want this thing. And obviously, Microsoft wants Windows to be the thing that runs on those PCs or on those servers. Like, there's a reason why Linux has the Linux or the server market, you know. So they want to get back into that, want to be able to support that stuff, and we want Linux people to do that stuff. It just feels like they haven't conquered it yet. Maybe Linux or Windows Server runs better on ARM than I think it does. I don't. It would surprise me. I mean,
Yeah.
it would surprise me. All right. Anything else to say on this topic before we move on to the Nuggies?
I think we covered it.
I'm honestly surprised we squeezed a whole hour out of that, to be honest with you. We had to talk about Windows to do it.
Yeah.
All right. So it is now time for the Nuggies of the week. And I am so excited about this name. Still shitty name.
Good.
Tyler, your Nuggie of the week, please.
Mine is a program called Swappy. If you don't know what Swappy is, it is a program for, like, you can use like Grim or Slurp or other, like, you don't have to, I don't think it's a Wayland only tool. I don't think so. It may be. But I essentially use like Grim or Slurp. You could use like Grim Blast to take screenshots, and then you pipe it into Swappy, and you get a nice interface for drawing, writing text over your image or screenshot before you save it. It's got a very simple config syntax, super easy to use. I've really liked using it. I may have talked about it before, but it's just something that I've been making use of a lot recently, especially with taking screenshots, drawing around like the section of like an output that's the problem, or piece of code where the problem is. It's very nice for doing that kind of stuff. So if you don't use something like that and you'd like to be able to draw and like edit and do stuff to your photos and screenshots like you do on your phone before you save it, perfect program. Check it out.
Unfortunately, it won't work on GNOME for me. Like, I try. So I've been looking for a replacement for Flameshot on Wayland because it just, for whatever reason, I can't get Flameshot to work on Wayland even though it says that it should. So I was like, you know, then I will just download Swappy, and I have Grim and Slurp or whatever here already, and should be able to just set it as a key binding and go along with it, but it won't work. I get some really weird errors.
You do have it. Did you make the config file for it?
I did. Well, that's the thing. I can't get Grim and Slurp to work either. Like, it won't get past the actual taking of the screenshot. And I get some really weird errors. The only screenshot tool that I can actually get to work is the GNOME screenshot tool, and it is the worst thing ever. It does it does its job. Okay, congratulations, you get to the point where it'll actually take screenshots, but other than that, it does nothing else. And like, everybody's like, oh, it's following the Unix philosophy. It does the thing that it's supposed to do. True, but I guess I got just really spoiled by Flameshot, where it just takes the screenshot and then stays there, and you can do your annotations on it. Unfortunately, I don't know. It's just I've had an adventure trying to find something that will work as well, and for whatever reason, I just can't get any of the Wayland tools that you would expect to work on Wayland to work under GNOME. I don't know what's. I haven't done enough research to figure out what's going on there. Eventually, I will, because I want my Flameshot to actually work. To be honest with you.
Yeah.
All right.
Flameshot's great.
Okay.
What's yours?
Speaking of Flame, mine is actually called Flame. Now, Tyler, way back a month ago, with the last time he was here, did a Nuggie of the week called Homar, I think, right, Tyler? Yeah?
Yep.
All right, so I didn't really care for Homar as a homepage. I just didn't really care for it. It was kind of finicky to get up and running for me. I had it going healthy a couple different times, and eventually I did get it running, and I got it set up, and I just didn't really care for it. So I was looking for something different, and there's a homepage called Flame. And basically what this will do is it doesn't give you any fancy widgets or anything like that. You just basically, in the top section, it will allow you to put all of your Docker containers, and so you have links to all of their web UIs or whatever. You can just click on it, it will take you there. And then below that, it will allow you to basically put all of your like your favorites or whatever. You can put all your websites that you normally visit there, and you can just use this as your new tab page. And it's very simple, very well designed. It doesn't do anything extraordinarily fancy or anything like that. It just does a good job of giving you access to all of your Docker container web pages or web UIs, and then all of your bookmarks. And you can manage it all within the on the website itself, and it's done through a Docker container. So you just run it like a regular Docker container, and it's really good. It has a few built-in themes, but you can also use custom CSS if you wanted to do your own custom CSS. I know that Steve, after I pointed him towards this, did his own custom CSS, so I know that's possible. You can set it up so that it's authenticated, so you can put in a password, and that way, if there's things that you don't want to have exposed to anybody else, if you expose this thing to the internet and put through an Nginx or whatever, you can have certain things that won't show up unless they have the password. So things like if you want your Portainer or whatever that be linked on there, but don't want it to show up to anybody who visits the website, you can do that. And that's awesome, right? And it's very, very easy to set up. There's a Docker Compose YAML file for it, and it just works extraordinarily well, and it's very, very simple. And that's what I've been using for my homepage. I didn't care for Homer all that much. This is just more simple. It's simpler and better for what I needed to use it for. So, yeah. That's my Nuggie.
Voice.
All right. So, that is the podcast. Yeah, we did a good job. We didn't actually go on to too many tangents. I thought it was actually going to be worse, even though I promised there wouldn't be that many tangents. We didn't actually do so bad. We stayed on topic. We did talk about Windows for about 20 minutes. What are you going to do?
We don't got to talk about that.
Anyways, that's it for this one. If you want to get in contact with us, you can do so in any number of ways. Probably the best way is to head on over to the website, which is available at linuxcast.org now. It is hidden behind Cloudflare, so it does still work exactly the same way, but because I host all of the DNS now with Cloudflare because of Nginx and stuff like that, that was a whole other thing that I learned this week that I didn't mention on earlier. Because I was using Nginx, and I decided I needed a little more security, so I figured out how to create Cloudflare tunnels and all this stuff. So that was another thing. I've advanced way past where I was when you left me. I'm just very proud of myself. That's why I want to keep saying it. Anyways, back to the contact information. You can find all that stuff linuxcast.org. There you'll find previous episodes all the way back to season 1 if you want to binge the Linuxcast. Some of those early episodes, if you go back and listen to those. Oh boy, I'm just saying they weren't very good. I'm just saying. Anyways, also, I don't know if I told this story, but when I went and redid the website a little bit and changed to Fireside for the podcast hosting, I found some of the old episodes there that had a host that I don't remember. Like, there was a co-host that I had on the podcast for like 4 episodes. I have no memory of this person whatsoever. Like, none. Like, I have no clue who it was. I can't pronounce their name. And they were there for like 4 episodes. I'm sure they're a fantastic person. So if you actually still watch this and you were on the show at one point, I don't remember you. Like, it's so stupid. It was like season 3 or season 4 or something like that. It was after Ricky stopped doing the podcast with me, but before Martin joined. And like, I have no clue who this person was. It's really freaking weird. Some serious old timers there, man. It's just really, really fucked up. Like, how can you do it? Yeah, I understand. I've been doing the podcast since 2017, but you wouldn't think. I mean, that's not that long ago. I should still remember this person. But I have no clue who it is. I couldn't honestly even begin to tell you how to pronounce their name or anything about them. None.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyways, you can find Tyler, who does have a Linux or a YouTube channel. He has lost the YouTube password again.
Yep.
You can
get in.
you can go subscribe to his dormant channel at youtube.com/ZaneOG. You can also join his Discord server. The links for those will be on the website at linuxcast.org/contact. Someone pinged me on my Discord server to let me know that the link on that page for my Discord server is old. So I need to go through and actually update those. I'll get that done later on today, so that's actually fixed. But linuxcast.org/contact, there you'll find the email address and the Discord server and the Matrix server. By the way, there's still people hanging out on my Matrix server. Good on you guys. I haven't been there but once in the last 6 months. So it's still there. People still use it. You can also find links to Odyssey and PeerTube and all that stuff all on that page. Check it out. thelinuxcast.org/contact. You can also head on over to the shop where you'll find awesome merch. That's at shop.thelinuxcast.org. There you'll find all sorts of awesome merchandise for you to check out. And it has amazing stuff. Shop.linuxcast.org. Thanks to everybody who does support me at patreon.com/linuxcast. I should do this properly and actually show you who those people are. So thank you guys for supporting me on Patreon. I truly do appreciate it. On YouTube and Ko-fi as well. And we record this live every Saturday at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time or thereabouts. You can watch us live at youtube.com/linuxcast. And we have a wonderful time with everybody in the chat, both before and after. So if you want to join in on the fun, you can do so live on Saturdays at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. But if you don't catch us live, we do post the podcast on the YouTube channel on Monday nights. And it's also available via audio everywhere you can get your audio from. And if you are on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it. If you're not on Apple Podcasts, still go over there, leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it. We'll see you next Saturday.
Bye.